Hi everyone, welcome to Miles of Scarves' 7th annual Yarn Ball. Thank you for tuning in. You're in for a fun, inspirational, and entertaining evening. Stick around to learn more about what we're raising money for, what it's like to live with MS, and of course for some hilarious Minute to Win It challenges. My name is Meredith Polk, and in 2009 I founded Miles of Scarves. It's hard to believe that what started as a group of my friends knitting in my living room after school has turned into a nonprofit that has raised over $150,000 for MS. Thank you so much for your support.
Hi, my name is Betsy, and I am Junior Board President of the Miles of Scarves and Culpeper Chapter President. We are so excited for this year's Yarn Ball and appreciate you all joining us. As Meredith had mentioned, one of the main goals of Miles of Scarves is to raise money for MS research. The Yarn Ball is our annual fundraiser to support MS research at a local university, and this year, our goal is to raise $15,000. Outside of the Yarn Ball, we sell scarves at craft fairs, sponsor and volunteer at a rest stop like MS, and more. We're excited to share more with you about what we do throughout the program tonight and how you could help support our mission in fighting MS. Before we get started, I want to give a gigantic thank you to all of our sponsors this year. Thank you to the Buchanan family, the Paramore family, Midas of Richmond, the Polk family, the Franklin family, and the Bowers family. We could not have done it without you.
Everybody, my name is Vian Nguyen, and I am Vice President of the Junior Board and President of the Maggie Walker Chapter. So if you're new to Yarn Ball or you're not super familiar with Miles of Scarves, you might not know exactly what MS is. So MS stands for multiple sclerosis. It's a disease that impacts the central nervous system. Healthy neurons have a protective layer called the myelin sheath. In MS, the myelin sheath breaks down, and this causes signals to be disrupted and causes a wide variety of symptoms, which are different for every person, but they can include blindness, paralysis, fatigue, and many more. Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS right now. However, research has made tremendous strides. There are now many different treatment options for the over 1 million people in the US living with the disease. However, there is still a lot of work to be done to determine how MS is caused, how to prevent it, and how to cure it. So your donations tonight will all go directly to MS research at VCU. Later tonight, you'll hear from Dr. Myla Goldman, and she'll tell you more about the research efforts at VCU and around the country.
Hi, Dr. Goldman. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
First of all, I want to thank you and your team for my amazing, beautiful scarf. So I am Dr. Myla Goldman, and I'm a physician who cares for patients with multiple sclerosis and related disorders at the Virginia Commonwealth University. And I also do research around multiple sclerosis.
Why did you decide to go into MS research? What inspired you?
So I don't know how long of the story that you want, but I was always interested in the brain. So I was a neuroscience undergraduate, but I actually went to medical school with a plan to do obstetrics. I've always been deeply committed to the care of women. And so once I got into medical school, I realized that obstetrics is actually a surgical specialty. And I'm not really a surgeon. So I found my way back to neurology. And then within neurology, I found my way to multiple sclerosis, which really made sense because a lot of my patients are women and they're living with their disease in the heart of their lives when they're trying to grow their families and manage their careers and care for their aging parents. And so from a neurologic perspective, the other thing that really interested me in choosing multiple sclerosis, besides the patient population, was the fact that at that time there were treatments, and it was a really rapidly emerging field. So I finished up my medical school and transitioned into my neurology residency in the 90s. when we were first approving interferon drugs for multiple sclerosis. So it was a very active time and a very exciting field to be engaged in.
That's really cool. Can you talk more about kind of the intersection of research and treatment?
The field is doing research to understand, who's at risk, what are the risk factors that may, influence someone in developing the disease. So, that's kind of understanding how do we prevent the disease. And then there's research around what are the best treatments for patients living with multiple sclerosis. And then there's research to find or understand new potential pathways for therapy. And often that begins like in an animal model in a basic science lab where we're studying different, potential therapies or target receptors that maybe are important in the disease. And then, the work that I do kind of more specifically in part is understanding how do we measure success in clinical trials. So if we find a drug and we want to determine whether or not it's helpful in multiple sclerosis, we use what's called an outcome measure, which is the endpoint of a study to determine whether or not a drug is effective. And so a lot of my research has been around endpoint determination and whether we're using the best outcome measure and what are the best outcome measures for studying drugs in treating patients with MS.
That's really interesting. So kind of related to that, can you share more about the endpoints? Can you give an example?
So traditionally, in multiple sclerosis, when we first started getting drugs approved in the 90s, the primary outcome or the primary measure of success was relapse rate. And so most of the drugs that you are aware of or think about as being approved for multiple sclerosis, they were approved based on their ability to reduce the number of relapses in a fixed period of time. So the annualized relapse rate. But what we know and understand about the disease is that there are other components of the disease that are occurring independent of the relapse rate. So progression of the disease, for example. And so one of the things that I have worked on over the years is to figure out what are good ways to measure disease progression separate from relapse rate. So measuring walking or hand function or cognition, and how can we use those tools to understand which drugs are most effective and partner with the FDA to identify sort of the best tools. I think the second piece of that, so that's kind of work I've done in the past. The second piece of that is the new frontier right now, or one of the new frontiers right now for multiple sclerosis treatment is remyelination therapies and repair therapies. And so if you're trying to repair the nervous system, you can't look at a relapse rate because the relapse rate tells you what's happening going forward. It doesn't tell you how well you're recovering from previous damage. And so we're doing research, and we have some grants that we're working on getting support to figure out how can we best measure improvement in the setting of remyelination drugs.
That makes sense. And you mentioned just now grants, and I know like the big thing for the Yarn Ball is raising money specifically for research. Could you kind of talk about that process of getting grants and kind of how they help move research forward?
Absolutely. So there's, so research starts with an idea, right? So somebody has an idea, they have a question. Many times, some of my ideas will come from seeing my patients or, experiencing, their journey over years. And so you have a question and then you want to answer that question. And so in order to answer that question, you need, time, money, resources, and patience. So commonly you might apply for like a grant funded by the National MS Society or by the National Institutes of Health or the Department of Defense. So one of these large either federal or foundation grants. However, in order to be competitive for those grants, you have to have what we call preliminary data. So you have to have some evidence that the idea has legs. It can't just be, well, Dr. Goldman thought this made sense, so she wants you to give her, $200,000. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So a lot of times we need what we call seed money to fund that early pilot work that then goes into support other grants. For example, right now, we are looking at some issues around blood pressure control and sleep and multiple sclerosis function, because we think that some of these comorbid diseases or comorbidities maybe affects our patients. And so we're doing a study of a small number of people that is supported from a philanthropic donation from an organization. And then we plan to take that data and apply for a large grant where we would then study that in a big group of folks. So that's kind of the pathway.
That's really cool. I guess I didn't realize there were like the pre-research stage before the full-on research projects. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes, let me add one more thing. Sometimes that also can come from an animal model. So my colleague, Dr. O at VCU does animal model research. And so he might have a question where he, wants to test it in 5 or 6, in a smaller study to show whether or not, there's something going on there. And then he would then apply to the NIH or the National MS Society to say, okay, now I want to study this in 2 different animal populations or in a larger, animal state. So the same thing is true for other aspects of research as well.
My name is Kara Gustafson, and I'm a member of the junior board for Miles of Scarves, as well as one of the presidents of the Deep Run chapter. I want to take a minute to share how you all can get involved and help support MS research. The simplest way is to follow the QR code on your screen to make a donation. You can make a donation through Venmo, PayPal, or our Facebook fundraiser, or you can write and mail a check. You can find our mailing address on the website. Also, you can buy scarves. All processes go to MS research. Visit our website, milesofscarves.org, to order. There are tons of other ways to get involved too. You can become a member of Miles of Scarves or start a chapter. We have chapters in the greater Richmond area and Culpeper, Virginia. You don't even have to know how to knit to join. We can teach you. Finally, you can join our Walk MS team or our Bike MS team. Follow us on social media at Miles of Scarves to stay up to date. And last but not least, if you shop on Amazon, set Miles of Scarves as your Amazon Smile charity.
I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Midas of Richmond. They were our first ever Yarn Ball sponsor, and they're still here supporting us years later. Miles of Scarves is just one of the many amazing community organizations that Midas of Richmond supports. We can't thank them enough for their positive impact. So if you need an oil change or a tune-up, be sure to go to Midas of Richmond.
Hi, my name is Olex. I was originally diagnosed with multiple sclerosis way back in 2006. At the time, I was working at a major medical institution down in Texas, and my wife had just found out that she was pregnant with our first child. My first symptoms initially were complete deafness on the one side, where I just could not hear anything. And the thought was, well, maybe it was a stroke. So we did a CT. Nothing showed up. So life went on. A couple months later, I had complete facial paralysis where everything went numb on the other side. And they decided pretty quickly that we need to do something more than just the CT. So we ordered an MRI. Well, again, I was the MRI expert for the hospital system, so it was a little weird to be on the table. So it's hard, but can you imagine basically, having to be the expert on something, but then actually also going in for a study, and then the technologist calls you out while your new wife is sitting right outside the tube, and you look at the images and you know exactly what it is, even though you're not a radiologist. You look at the images and it lit up like a Christmas tree, and I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is multiple sclerosis. So a few weeks later, they confirmed the diagnosis. So at that point, Amy was probably 3-4 months in, and we decided that we needed to get closer to home. So we we uprooted the family while my wife was in her second trimester for pregnancy and moved back closer to all of our family back here in Virginia. So we settled in the Roanoke, Virginia area, and life went on with regards to not really having any major issues. And I was trying therapy after therapy to figure out what would work. And after going through 9 different therapies, we basically had to basically leave the work that I was doing in Southwest Virginia and come back closer to home because multiple sclerosis had taken away my legs. I was no longer able to walk even short distances in or out of the different imaging equipment, though, which, again, the joke I always like to make about this is I can't really be the expert on MRI when I can't really get close to the magnet because I'm driving around in a giant metal wheelchair. So MS happened remarkably quick for me. It kind of just plateaued along nicely, but then when it got bad really, really quick. So we eventually moved back to the Richmond area, and after moving back to Richmond area, I decided I needed to refocus myself, and I started doing a bunch of advocacy work to better fund research for multiple sclerosis and better fund policies that would help people with MS and other disabilities actually live their best lives. I fundamentally really appreciate what y'all do with the yarn ball, especially because with Miles of Scarves, all your money is going directly towards research. And I always like to say, as a former scientist, we really don't understand this disease right now, why it affects people so differently, and some so aggressively. The research needs to go on. So we do it all from different avenues. Like, I serve on a couple of different committees, national and international, to help analyze the research and figure out what is the best approach to help find the cure as quickly as possible. But right now, it's something that's still somewhat of a black box. We don't know why some people are affected so severely versus other people who have a mild case. Every case of MS is serious, but they can drastically impact your life in terms of how things are going. I'm also still moving forward with not letting this define me. I am actually back in school at this point, though, with the University of Richmond studying cloud computing, since this will allow me to do something straight out of my wheelchair. But at the same time, it's been something that's impacted well over a decade of my life. And I want this to stop so that my kids and current people who are being diagnosed and everything else don't have to keep going through this. This is a life-altering condition and needs to stop. To do that, we need to get a better handle on this. To get a better handle on this, we need to do more research. So that's why I really appreciate the Miles of Scars program and where they're actually getting money directly to research to help move this along so we can actually find a cure. Thank you. I really appreciate all your help. Thank you for all you do. Bye.
Hold me close and hold me fast. The magic spells you cast. This is La Vie en Rose. When you kiss me, heaven sighs. And though I close my eyes, I see La Vie en Rose. When you press me to your heart, I'm in a world apart.
One thing that you touched on a little bit, but obviously for clinical trials, there are people participating. I know a lot of our audience is people who have family members with MS or who have MS themselves. Is there any way they can get involved or learn more about those trials?
The best place to identify those is at clinicaltrials.gov. So the government runs a website that tells you all the trials that are happening. And it's a really valuable website. And you can put in any search term that you want. And then if you look across the top, this is something not everybody sees. So I always tell my patients, if you look across the top, there's a map button. And if you click on the map view, you then see the world, and then you can see the United States, and then you can see Virginia, and you can identify where is the nearest place that's doing research in the topic that you're interested in. So that's a great resource. In terms of, participating in early kind of preliminary work, the best thing is to work with your, physician, like if you're receiving care at VCU or at UVA or Duke or wherever your, doctor is, at an academic center, typically there's early research that is ongoing. If somebody's particularly interested in something, then they can also always reach out to one of us, if they're not currently a patient. Oftentimes these different universities like VCU has online the studies that are happening at VCU. And so patients will sometimes find us that way as well.
That's really cool. Definitely helpful resources. Circling back a bit to your research in particular, is there like a current project that you're working on that you're super passionate about?
We have a couple different projects actually. I'm just passionate in general, right, about the work. Currently I'm funded right now through the National MS Society to look at the importance of glucose control, blood sugar control in patients that are relapsing. So that's an ongoing study where if a patient is having an acute relapse, we're looking at how they respond to steroids, what their blood sugar response is. We have a study, two different treatment studies that are part of that sort of large clinical trial design where we're looking at stem cell transplant as well as kind of the best drug for a patient to start on. So initial treatment. And those two studies are funded by federal organizations. And then we're doing some preliminary studies right now, as I mentioned, looking at blood pressure regulation and sleep and how these things intersect to affect patients living, day to day with their multiple sclerosis. Does it affect their fatigue, their cognition, their mood? So we're working to understand how some of these life factors maybe are intersecting with patients' symptoms as they're managing their MS. We have a grant that is under review this week, looking at an outcome measure for a remyelination trial. So that's a study that I'm hoping we're going to be getting going. I'm very passionate about that. I've been working to get that funded now, since I have transitioned over to VCU. So hopefully we'll be able to continue our work on that as well, in understanding what tools can we be using as a community to identify and confirm the benefit of remyelination drugs for people living with multiple sclerosis.
That's really cool. Definitely exciting that hopefully the grant comes through. What are you hoping will be kind of the outcomes or applications of any of these projects?
Well, there's a couple of different areas where I'd like to see us moving as a MS community. So one is, we have approved more drugs than we have been able to understand how to manage them. So, in the last 15 years, we've approved over 17 drugs for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. So we're getting drugs into the pipeline faster than we really have confidence about how and when and who to put them on. So one of the things that we need to continue to work on is understanding what is the best medicine for someone to start on. And so that project, which is named Deliver MS, is a really important question. I think that the other thing is about how do we repair the nervous system. And so I'm very passionate about figuring out how do we find the drugs and measure the drugs that we want for repair, because that's really important to, the patients that we have living with MS. And then, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to see that over the next, 3 to 5 years, that we'll actually have drugs that are approved, and we'll know with confidence who, is going to benefit from them, and what benefit looks like. And then I think the third thing that is an area of continued exploration is understanding the things that drive the problems that affect patients every day. So many of my patients, they have the sort of, so they may have the visible symptoms where they have, weakness or tremor, and people can sort of understand and see those things and compensate for those things in their lives. But many of them also struggle with what people refer to as the invisible symptoms, where they're struggling with cognitive problems or fatigue or depression. And the people around them don't see those problems and don't always know how to compensate or assist in supporting them for those types of symptoms. And so understanding, what is contributing to those and what parts we can fix is really important. And so that's one of the things that I've been looking at in terms of this glucose regulation. We've looked at diet, we've looked at, blood pressure regulation. So I think there are these other things that are happening in these individuals' bodies more generally that we could be working towards to support their disease and living with MS. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think what you touched on, especially about the invisible symptoms, is something that I think the general population doesn't necessarily associate with MS. So that's definitely super important that you're
Yeah,
addressing that through research.
yeah,
Um,
big challenge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goldman, for teaching us all a little bit more about MS research. Your work is really impressive and meaningful, and we're proud to be able to support it. In addition to sponsoring MS research, over the years, we have also sponsored scholarships for graduating high school seniors who have MS or their parent has MS. And we've also sponsored holiday families, where we donate money for holiday gifts for a family who can't afford them due to MS-related medical expenses. And of course, we also sponsor a rest stop at Bike MS every year. We volunteer at the rest stops and hand out our famous homemade cookies. Thank you to everyone who has donated over the years to make this all possible.
Hi, my name is Danica King and I'm 45 years old. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis on August 19th, 2010 at the age of 34. In April of 2010, I noticed I was having light sensitivity as well as having trouble walking up on the curb. At the time, I gave myself a diagnosis of a brain aneurysm. Keep in mind, I didn't really know what a brain aneurysm was. In June of 2010, I went to the doctor without ever being examined and me only explaining that I had gotten clumsy. Multiple sclerosis was one of the things the doctor suspected. After ruling out another medical condition, seeing a neurologist, having an MRI as well as a lumbar puncture, I was officially diagnosed with MS. So that process took about 2 months. I'm told that is very quick compared to many other MSers that I've talked to over the years. Due to my cognitive decline, I'm no longer able to work a regular job, so I'm on disability. As my physical abilities have declined, I now wear leg braces, a hip flexion assist device to help cope with my drop foot, and I use a rollator or a wheeled walker. Despite my assistance devices, I lead a fairly active life. I self-published a book titled Figure It Out, Snapshots of My Journey with Multiple Sclerosis. In the book, I share tools that I use to make my life easier and talk about what I do as a distraction from my MS symptoms. I'm heavily involved with a disabled sports league called Sportable and currently participate in some of their outside sports. Those include cycling, kayaking, and archery, to name a few. Before the pandemic, I attended several MS support groups and other MS events all over Virginia. Any organization that donates proceeds to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is of great benefit to me. Several of the events that I mentioned attending are sponsored by the National MS Society. In 2019, I attended the Yarn Ball. Miles of Scarves is that much more significant since it is a youth-led organization headed by Meredith Polk. I've had the pleasure of attending some of the same MS Society fundraising activities as Meredith and Miles of Scarves. I encourage anyone who is able to support Miles of Scarves and the Yarn Ball. I'm excited that MS support groups are finally meeting in person. I'm so glad that the MS Society offers other events such as the MS Black Experience. The MS Navigator program has become an invaluable resource to me. Being a one-person household on disability income, I'm happy that the MS Society Navigators have been able to provide financial assistance in my time of need. They helped me get my stair lift, which I call the elevator in my house. And they even offer assistance with getting things such as incontinence supplies. For resources that they may not be able to assist with in its entirety, they're happy to refer you to another MS organization or any other resource for help. I volunteered for Bike MS. I'm a team captain for Walk MS. My team name is MS King. Get it, Miss King? Anyway, even with my physical limitations, I do the walk using my rollator, and we also have great purple team shirts. Since Walk MS has been virtual the last 2 years, this year I pivoted in creating a Zoom categories Walk MS fundraiser for my team. In addition, I attend most MS Society events I'm invited to so that people making donations can see an example of the people that they are helping out. My outfit most days is a MS shirt and jeans, or a MS shirt and sweatpants on the days that I have to do a sporting activity. I wish people knew about the unpredictability of MS and how just because we look fine, you can't see the other things that we might be dealing with, like our cognitive issues or possibly even crippling fatigue. I'd like to thank Miles of Scarves for all that you do and all that you will continue to do. Thank you so much.
So I have to get 10 of these pom-poms from this bowl into this bowl for our Miles of Scarves Minute to Win It challenge. I tried a little bit. It's not as easy as it looks, but here we go.
Done with 15 seconds left.
Did it work? I got him.
3, 2, 1.
Oh no. Are they all out? Oh! Less than a minute. There's one left. Yay! Did it in with 48 seconds left.
Hi, I'm Sherry Ellis, President of the National MS Society in Virginia, West Virginia. I'm so excited to be part of the Cookie Challenge and help raise money tonight for the Miles of Scarves. You know, they've donated over $100,000 to MS Research and Bike MS Rest Stop. They're known as the Cookie Rest Stop sponsor. And so we're so excited that tonight, because I practiced so hard last year, that Meredith gave me an entire stack to try to get that cookie from my forehead to my mouth. Let's see how that goes. Okay, not yet. I got it. Way to go.
Ow! I wonder if it counts if it doesn't go into my mouth. Try the other side. No. Okay, we're starting to move another one. Maybe slow and steady runs the race.
Doesn't count.
Off to a great start.
This is the hard part.
From the eye.
Yep. I can't imagine what I look like right now. Oh.
So close. You did it!
Your donation tonight to the Miles of Scarves yarn ball is going to end MS, and you're going to be part of an incredible movement. Thank you for all you do.
I hope you enjoyed watching that as much as we enjoyed filming it. Thank you so much for participating in the second annual Miles of Scarves Minute to Win It challenges. You're all winners in my eyes. Also, I'd like to say thank you so much to Mike and Danica for sharing your stories and giving us a glimpse into your journeys. And of course, thank you to the Miles of Scarves Junior Board and Executive Board for all your help making this event possible. Thank you to Sahana for providing music. And of course, one final shout out to our amazing sponsors. Thank you so much to the Buchanan family, Midas of Richmond, the Paramore family, the Polk family, the Franklin family, and the Bowers family. And finally, thank you to all of you for helping us raise money for MS research. Have a great rest of your evening and see you next year.
I think I would just want to share a reflection on you and your group. And I think that, every person can make a difference. And we all have, superpowers and things that are special about us. And I think living a meaningful life is about taking whatever your unique skill is and applying it in a space that is meaningful for you, right? So like you guys are doing this knitting, like that's your skill. I can't knit. My grandmother tried to teach me my whole life. I never picked it up. I couldn't figure it out. So that's your skill. And then you're taking that skill and applying it to a space that's meaningful to you all, which is, the MS community. And so I think what I would want people to take away from this is actually to be inspired by the work that you and your group are doing and to realize that every person can make a difference if they just, figure out what and where they want to make a difference and then, take that first step. And so I'm just so impressed and so grateful to have met your group and love what you guys are doing and love my scarf.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot.